Good day everyone! Today, we will be discussing about the General Ledger System or the GLS. Let's look on the figure 6.34. It characterizes the GLS as a hub connected to the other systems of the firm through spokes of information flows. Subsystems of the Transaction Processing System or the TPS process various aspects of economic events, which are recorded in the respective special journals and subsidiary accounts. Summaries of these transactions flow into the GLS and become sources of input for the Financial Reporting System or the FRS. Note, however, that information also flows from the FRS as feedback into the GLS. We shall explore this thoroughly later. In this section, we review the key elements of the GLS. Also, take note that the GLS provides data for the Management Reporting System or the MRS. This is the organization's internal or discretionary reporting system. Since the MRS does not directly impact the financial reporting process, we give only ancillary treatment to this system.
My discussion is all about the journal voucher. The source of input to the general ledger is the journal voucher, which is illustrated in the figure 6.35. A journal voucher can be used to represent summaries of similar transactions or a single unique transaction. It also identifies the financial amounts and affected general ledger accounts. Routine transactions, adjusting entries, and closing entries are all entered into the general ledger via journal voucher. So what is the content of a journal voucher? The journal voucher is a document of every financial transaction, having the necessary information such as the identification number of the voucher, date, description of the business transaction, amount of transaction, applicable taxes, a reference to other evidences, accounts impacted, supporting references to documentary evidence, the signature of the maker, and signature of the authorized person. So what is the purpose of a journal voucher? First is to record any business transaction which is wrongly recorded. Next is to record non-cash-oriented transactions in the books of accounts. Every transaction does not necessarily involve an outflow. Hence, transactions such as depreciation of tangible assets, amortization of intangibles, write-off account balances, adjusting journal entries, and so on, require the use of journal vouchers. There are different types of journal voucher. First is the depreciation voucher for recording the depreciation expense of the year. Second is the prepaid voucher for recording prepaid expenses. Third is the fixed assets voucher for recording the purchase of fixed assets. Fourth is the adjusting voucher for recording the closing entries. Fifth is the transfer voucher for shifting of balances of one account to another. Next is rectification voucher for rectification of an error. Next is provision voucher for providing an expense of an estimation basis. And the last one is the accrual voucher for recording of accrual income. What is the difference between the journal voucher and the journal entry? The words journal voucher and journal entry are used interchangeably. However, there is a difference between the two. The former is the inception of any financial transaction and the latter is the effect given in the books of accounts. Journal entry is recorded in the journal like the primary books of accounts, while vouchers are recorded documents kept as evidence for the journal entry. Journal entries can be simple like there is one debit and there is one credit, or it can also be compound like there can be one or more debits and one or more credits. However, there is no such difference in journal vouchers. Any number of journal entries can be drawn from one journal voucher. And the last difference is the next step after the journal entry is the posting the entries to appropriate ledgers. On the other hand, the next step of the journal voucher is recording the transaction into the system.
Next discussion is about the General Ledger System Database. The GLS database includes a variety of files, but these files ay depende sa mga firms. The following examples are representative. First is the General Ledger Master File. It is the principal file in the GLS database. Itong file na to is based sa published chart of accounts ng mga organization. Each record in the General Ledger Master File is either a separate General Ledger account, for example, sales, or the control account, for example, account receivable control, for a corresponding subsidiary ledger in the transaction processing system. The financial reporting system draws upon the GL Master to produce the firm's financial statements, while yung management reporting system, ginagamit din tong file na to support internal information reporting. Here in the figure illustrates the structure of a typical General Ledger Master file. Next file is the General Ledger History file. It has the same format as the GL Master, and yung primary purpose niya is to provide historical financial data for comparative financial reports. Next file is the Journal Voucher file. It contains the total collection of the journal vouchers processed in the current period. This file provides a record of all general ledger transactions and replaces the traditional general journal. Next file is the Journal Voucher History file. Contains journal vouchers for past periods. This historical information supports management stewardship responsibility to account for resource utilization. Both the current and historical journal voucher files are important links in the firm's audit trail. Next file is the Responsibility Center file, which contains the revenues, expenditures, and other resource utilization data for each responsibility center in the organization. The management reporting system draws upon this data for input in the preparation of responsibility reports for management. And the last file is the Budget Master file. It contains budgeted amounts for revenues, expenditures, and other resources for responsibility center. This data kasabay ng Responsibility Center file are the basis for responsibility accounting.
So my topic is all about financial reporting system. The law dictates management's responsibility for providing stewardship information to external parties. This reporting obligation is met via the FRS. Much of the information provided takes the form of standard financial statements, tax returns, and documents required by regulatory agencies such as Securities and Exchange Commission or SEC. So next is the main objective of financial reporting. It is to provide financial information about the reporting entity to users of financial statements. That is useful in making decisions about providing resources to the entity as well as the other financial decisions. The financial statements or the financial information includes a summary of the transactions of a business of a period of time, usually 12 months or 1 year. The primary recipients of financial statements informations are external users such as stockholders, creditors, and government agencies. For stockholders or investor, nagre-rely sila sa financial statement para makapag-decide kung papautangin ba nila yung entity or hindi. Siyempre, titingnan muna nila yung information about sa income ng entity kung magiging safe ba yung investment nila in the near future. Next is yung creditors. Siyempre, need din nilang i-check yung financial information or financial statements ng entity. Kung may kakayahan ba yung entity na magbayad ng utang hanggang sa matapos if ever man napapautangin nila. So, last primary user natin ng financial statement is yung government agencies. Of course, through FS malalaman natin kung ano ba'y dapat nilang bayaran, like yung taxes na nakadepende sa income. na makikita natin sa income statements and yung mga other expenses ba na dapat nating i-collect sa mismong entity. These users of informations are interested in the performance of the organization as a whole. Therefore, they require information that allows them to observe trends in performance over time and to make comparison between different organizations. Given the nature of these needs, financial reporting information must be prepared and presented by all organizations in a manner that is generally accepted and understood by the external users. For us naman, para ma-ensure na yung financial reporting has high quality, yung information is kailangan daw maging comparable, verifiable, timely, and understandable. At para naman maging effective yung financial information sa mga potential users, the system must establish that can capture data about the relevant transaction and events that occur during the financial year, and summarize them appropriately and present them in a format that the users are capable of understanding. So that's all about the financial reporting system.
Sophisticated users are database developers who write structured query language to select, insert, delete, and update data. They do not use any application or programs to request the database. They directly interact with the database by means of a query language like structured query language. These users will be the scientists, engineers, analysts, who thoroughly study structured query language and database management system to apply the concepts in their requirements. In short, we can say this category includes designers and developers of database management system and structured query language. A query language is a specialized programming language for searching and changing the contents of a database. Even though the term originally refers to a sub-language for only searching or querying the contents of a database, modern query languages such as structured query language are general languages for interacting with the DBMS, including statements for defining and changing the database schema, populating the contents of the database, searching the contents of the database, updating the contents of the database, defining integrity constraints over the database, stored procedures, authorization rules, triggers, and etc. The data definition statements of a query language provide primitives for defining and changing the database schema, while data manipulation statements allow populating, querying, as well as updating the database. Queries are usually expressed declaratively without side effects using logical conditions, while the naive users are the unsophisticated users who does not need to be aware of the presence of the database system. They interact with the database only with the help of the application interface and are just accessing the application whatever they are using. Naive users work on developed applications and get the desired result.
Financial reporting is the last process or last step in the accounting cycle. So figure 6.27 illustrates the financial reporting system and the other information subsystem. Each year, we can say na yung mga company, they started with a clean state whether existing na sila or starting pa lang. Why? This is because ang account balances na lang meron sila is related to the real accounts or yung mga accounts na makikita natin sa balance sheet. Because these accounts will not be closed not unless the organization or the company decided to liquidate. Now moving forward to our steps, the first step that should be followed is to capture the transaction. Capture transaction is inside the box, which means this will be your process or your action. And every time na may nakukuha or nakakapture ka na transaction, you will enter it into your database. Then, the second step will be the recording of transaction into journal and posting them to subsidiary ledger. Yung mga info na gagamitin mo for this step came from the transaction database. There will be two rules in recording the journal. First, if madalas magamit yung account or madalas mangyari yung transaction, you will record them into to your special journals like kunwari sa sales journal, cash journal. And then if hindi naman sila ganun kadalas mangyari, you can either post them or record them into your general journal or directly to your journal voucher. Then subsidiary ledger on the other hand is dito nakasummarize na yung mga transactions mo. Like for example, ng subsidiary ledger is yung accounts receivable ledger. So dito, lahat lang ng accounts related to accounts receivable ang nakasummarize. Pero under ng accounts receivable subsidiary ledger, meron pa rin mga specific name yung or specific accounts yung mga clients mo na kung saan yung mga transaction nila with you nakasummarize doon. Then the third step is to prepare journal voucher and it will be stored in your journal voucher database. Then the fourth step is to post them to general ledger. So the information that will be used in this step will came from your journal voucher database. In this step, isa-summarize na lahat ng transaction mo with the respective accounts. So dito, magkakasama na lahat ng sa accounts receivable mo kunwari, ganun na. Unlike kasi sa subsidiary ledger, naka per account yan, per customer. Unlike dito sa general ledger, isang account balances or isang account balance na lang ang sa account receivable mo. And then the frequency of updating your general ledger will depend on your system integration. System integration, ito yung process of combining different subsystem into one larger system. So for example, yung sales accounts mo or your sales accounts, if naka-integrate ito sa iyong general ledger, every time na i-update mo yung sales account mo, mag-a-update din yung general ledger mo. The fifth step is to obtain account balances for worksheet in order to produce a worksheet document. And this worksheet document will be used in preparing the trial balance. As you can see in the figure, the term prepared trial balance is under the manual system, which means that the command will continuously happen the commands will continuously happen not unless you manually stop it. And then the next step or the sixth step is to create a balance sheet or a balance sheet document rather. This document will be used in analyzing the account balances to prepare adjusting entries, and these adjusting entries dapat may equivalent silang journal voucher that will be stored in the journal voucher file, and dapat ma-post din yung journal entries mo into the general ledger. So actually yung recording and posting your adjusting entries or adjustments is the seventh step. Then the eighth step is to make adjusted trial balance. So we know that adjusted trial balance consists of your unadjusted trial balance and your adjustments. Now moving forward to the ninth step, this is the step where you will prepare and make financial statements. Syempre dahil nga may adjusted trial balance ka na, nakapag-adjust ka na, you can now create or produce a financial statement that your stockholders or shareholders use para sa paggawa ng financial or ng decision nila. Alongside with sa paggawa mo ng financial statement is yung pag-e-entry mo din and pag-post mo ng closing entries. So dito sa closing entries, lahat na ng nasa income statement mo na accounts, you will close them into your retained earnings. Para dito yung balances ng income mo is mag-reflect siya sa balance sheet. So take note na lahat ng ginagawa mong entries in this step sa pag-close mo ng entries or ng accounts, kailangan may equivalent silang journal voucher and they will be stored in your journal voucher file and then kailangan ma-post din sila sa general ledger. The last step is to prepare and create post-trial balance. So, your balance in this statement or in this process will be based on your general ledger balances. So, take note that in this step, ang meron ka na lang is your real accounts. Since nga, doon sa 10th step, i-close mo na lahat ng nominal accounts mo or yung mga nasa income statement accounts mo. Lahat ng nandoon is nag-update na or nag-reflect na sa iyong retained earnings. Kaya, in this step, sa last step mo, yung pag-create mo ng post-trial balance, ang meron ka na lang talaga is your real accounts.
Upon identifying the financial reporting procedures, let us now identify what are the typical reports that we could derive from the general ledger system. One would be the general ledger analysis, which includes the listing of the transactions, the allocation of expenses to cost centers, the comparison of the account balances from period to period, and of course the trial balances. In the practice setting, general ledger analysis is usually done by the accountants for them to be able to identify what transactions causes the accounts to move, as well as to be able to detect if there are items or transactions recorded in an account that should not be recorded there. So that is one report that can be produced by the general ledger system. Another, of course, the most important reports that we need and expect to be created are the financial statements, especially our balance sheet, or what is now known as the statement of financial position, the income statement or the statement of comprehensive income, and the statement of cash flows. Then we could also have the managerial reports, which are our management reports, such as the analysis of sales, of cash, of receivables, and other needed reports by the management. And lastly, the chart of accounts can also be derived from the general ledger system, wherein it is presented as a coded listing of the accounts. Aside from being included in the reports, the chart of accounts are also one of our inputs in the general ledger system. Now let's proceed to figure 6.38, which shows the overview of the general ledger or financial reporting system using database technology. This is being presented as a combination of batch and real-time computer technology. As you can see in the figure, there are various subsystems: the sales system, cash receivable system, purchases system, and other transaction processing systems, which totaled each of their transaction by batch. It will proceed to the general ledger master file and the journal voucher transaction file, wherein it will then go to the data processing department, and the system will process it and update the general ledger master together with the general ledger history and other files applicable to be recorded to the journal voucher file, then proceed to the financial reporting group, which will prepare the adjusting and closing entries to be able to create the adjusted trial balance, financial statements, and post-closing trial balance. And finally, the general ledger department will summarize and then review the reports for the financial statements generated to be filed. Some examples of systems that could be used as database are the SAP and also the Oracle database, which are Enterprise Resource Planning or ERP systems. By the use of this database technology, advantages such as being able to update and reconcile the records immediately can be obtained. Therefore, it could produce timely information. Also, it removes the separation of transaction authorization and processing, meaning there is less human intervention. In line with this is that the compensating control should be maintained, which are the detailed journal voucher listing and the account of activity reports. Then lastly, the general ledger or financial reporting system using database technology have a centralized access to accounting records. For its access controls, it requires passwords and authorization tables. This constitutes less work to the database technology.
That would be all for our discussion. Thank you for listening.